Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video on my channel. So you might have seen in some of my recent videos that I got a new boa constrictor. And I did give this boa a name, by the way. His name is Ray. Well, Ray's first month with me has been a little bit rough for the both of us, so I thought I'd update you on how he's doing. First of all, it's only taken Ray a short amount of time to start trampling and killing most of the plants I gave him. I've always found it difficult to keep plants healthy when it comes to snakes. So I'm guessing it won't be long before I have to rethink having plants in Ray's enclosure. And on top of that, even though I let Ray's enclosure go through a pretty good cycling period, shortly after I got him, it just exploded with gnats. And even though gnats don't pose any harm to Ray, I'm sure they're just as annoying to him as they are to me. But I've taken some measures to control the gnats, and they're finally starting to go away. A greater concern was that during Ray's first couple of weeks with me, he regurgitated the mouse that I fed him. And this worried me quite a bit, especially since Ray came to me from the breeder just slightly underweight. So I did some extra research, particularly about boas and regurgitation, and I learned quite a bit more that I didn't know. So in today's video, I thought I'd also share that research with you. Now, I'll tell you that I'm not an expert, I'm not a vet or a zoologist. The only thing I can share with you is what I've learned from my own research and experience. And I made a few mistakes that might have led to Ray regurgitating his food. So I'm doing my best to remedy this and hopefully make sure Ray is on the right track. I had already learned from the research that I had done that boa constrictors have a slower metabolism than some other species of snakes. And while many snakes should be fed every 7 to 10 days, juvenile boas should be fed every couple of weeks, and as they become adults can eat every 4 to 6 weeks. What I didn't know was that because of this slower metabolism, boas, especially babies, can have very sensitive stomachs, which makes them more prone to regurgitation. And if not treated properly, the regurgitating can become a recurring and chronic problem called regurgitation syndrome. And this can lead to serious health problems and can even be fatal. So needless to say, when Ray had regurgitated, I became very concerned. I have to admit that this regurgitation was brought on by mistakes that I made and things that I should have known better. When I did the unboxing video of Ray, I told you that the breeder had told me he was getting ready to shed. And the next day his eyes went blue, and then about 5 days later he shed his skin. So when I fed my other snakes, I noticed some feeding responses from Ray. And even though he was getting ready to shed, I went ahead and offered him a mouse to see if he'd take it, which he did. So in hindsight, I really should have let him finish his shed before offering him food. And that could have definitely led him to regurgitate. The other mistake I had made, and also something I should have known better, was that I should have left Ray alone and let him acclimate to his new enclosure before offering him food. It really is just basic snake care 101 that when you first bring home a new snake, you should leave them alone in their enclosure and don't bother them at all for at least a week, if not more, just to minimize any stress for some time until they feel comfortable in their new situation. With the stress of being shipped, being in a new enclosure, and getting ready to shed, I should have given him some time to get past all of that and get his shed done and acclimate to his new enclosure before offering him food. And so I'm not sure what I was thinking, and I should have been more patient and aware of that. So more about the regurgitation and what I learned about that. First of all, regurgitation is when a snake vomits up undigested or partially digested food. And I've never had a snake regurgitate before. I think another mistake I made with Ray was thinking about his eating habits just the same as I would with other species of snakes, and not considering some things that I've now learned are particular to boa constrictors, and especially baby and juvenile boas, and not taking into account that some of the reasons that any snake might regurgitate their food applies even more so to boas. One of the first reasons a boa might regurgitate their food is because the temperatures in the enclosure are not correct. Boas need a basking spot of 85 to 90 degrees and a gradient in the rest of the enclosure that ranges from the mid-70s into the 80s. And I've checked the temperatures in Ray's enclosure and they really are perfect, so I know that's not the problem. And another reason a snake might regurgitate its food is just purely due to stress. Making sure you don't handle a snake for 24 to 48 hours after it's eaten. With a boa, maybe even waiting until it's completely digested its food or pooped. Also making sure that your snake has plenty of hides and cover to feel safe and secure. Ray has lots of choices for hiding places and cover, but so far he seems to like being arboreal and hanging out in different places in the top of his enclosure. And another reason for boa constrictors or any species of snake to regurgitate is by feeding them prey items that are too large. And this is what I've learned is particularly important for boa constrictors, even more than a lot of other snakes. With most snakes, I generally go by the rule of a prey item should be no longer than the largest part of his body. This has always worked out just fine for my other snakes, but with boas having a slower metabolism and being more sensitive, they need slightly smaller prey items. So I think another mistake was, aside from the fact that I should have given him more time to shed and acclimate before feeding him, was that I fed him a mouse that was just a little too big. So I knew I had to get a good handle on the situation and make sure that this didn't become a recurring problem. What I learned from doing further research was that when a young boa regurgitates its food, it's really important to not feed them again for at least 3 to 4 weeks. This gives them time for their stomachs to settle down and for their esophagus to heal from any stomach acid that might have been brought up. This may feel like you're neglecting your snake by not feeding it, but 3 to 4 weeks for a snake is like us missing breakfast. Then when that time has passed, feed them a smaller prey item. I waited for 3 weeks to feed Ray and then gave him a fuzzy mouse instead of a small adult mouse. Also, during that time, I completely left him alone and didn't handle him at all. And over the course of that time, Ray seemed to relax into his new enclosure and feel more and more at home. And he's eaten twice now without regurgitating and seems to be doing fine, so I'm quite a bit relieved. And once I know this regurgitation issue is past us, I'll be working to help him gain some of that weight back. They say that experience is the best teacher, and I don't like having to learn from mistakes, but I guess that's better than not learning at all. And hopefully by sharing this, maybe someone out there might be able to avoid making the same mistakes. I'm confident that I've gotten Ray on the right track, and I'm really looking forward to Ray being with me for a long time and watching him grow. And I'm sure there will be plenty of update videos on Ray in the future. So that's all I have for today, and I'll see you again soon in the next video.